It is a beautiful day in Seoul, Korea. But the same can't be said for Kim Seong-jun's day, who plans to end life after learning he is in a whopping debt of $210,308. After a banker confirms it for him, Kim is sure what he needs to do. So he chooses to stand on the ledge of the overpass bridge, and after thanking the banker on the phone, he removes his spectacles with shaky hands and the Han River. This could have been the end of Kim's life, but fate had something else planned for him, which is why Kim soon opens his eyes to find himself washed ashore on an island. It turns out to be Bamseum Island, a garbage island located near the city in the middle of the Han River. Bummed that he couldn't even end his life at will, Kim checks his phone. But the phone won't start because it is not a waterproof phone. However, Kim is still determined to in one way or the other, and stares at Building 63, a tall structure. He wonders if height would be enough to silence him. He sets off to find a way back to the city to execute his plan. But every corner of the island remains far away from the city. After walking the length of the island, he finds himself back at the same spot he started, and realizes there is no way out of the island. Left with no choice, Kim spends the night shivering, frustrated that the city is so close yet out of his reach. The next morning, Kim wakes up from under a pile of trash that H used to protect himself from the cold. He looks around and realizes it was not a dream, but he is, after all, living a nightmare. Just then he hears a horn from a ship, and with his hope restored, he runs to the other end of the island. He quickly wears his glasses and dusts off his clothes to make himself look presentable, before he starts calling and waving his hands frantically to grab the captain's attention. A man on board, taking pictures, sees him, and feeling happy someone is waving at him, he starts waving back with the same enthusiasm, completely oblivious of how luck is messing with Kim. No one can believe that somebody could get stuck on the island that is so close to the city. As a result, the ship sails off without stopping. So to send a clear message, after his last plan was an utter failure, Kim writes help on the sand, hoping someone will see that and rescue him. While waiting, he dries off his phone's battery, and once dried, he places it back, and after praying to all the gods, he tries to switch his phone on. Luckily his prayers are heard, and the phone switches on, but the battery is almost flat. So he makes an emergency call, and explains to the operator that he's stuck on a deserted island in the middle of the Han River. The operator thinks it is a prank call and disconnects. With the battery almost gone, Kim needs to act quickly. So he calls his ex-wife, Soo-young, hoping she can relay the message and send help. But Soo-young reminds him of their decision not to contact each other and hangs up, refusing to talk to him. He pleads with her not to hang up, but she already did. Kim is on the verge of tears when his phone suddenly rings. It is from a telemarketer who starts enumerating all the benefits their company provides, almost as if she's rapping. Kim tries to be courteous at first, but when she doesn't stop talking, he gets desperate and pleads to her to send help, amidst her non-stop rapping. He tries his best to be heard and ends up shouting, "Help me." But, as luck would have it, his phone's battery runs out. He shakes his phone before yanking it, as it is of no use now. As a last resort, he decides to swim back to the city. He preps himself and, like a noob, dives in, splashing his arms and struggling. It so happens that Kim never learned to swim, and now he's struggling for his life. He gets flashbacks from when it was his first swimming lesson with his dad, who did nothing but give him blatant instructions while standing on the edge of the pool, while Kim struggled to keep his head out of the water. After taking a plunge, this time when Kim's head pops out of the water, he sees the interview panel questioning him why he's applied for the job, when he is obviously over age and with a very low score in the TOEIC exam. Amidst keeping himself from drowning and flapping his arms, Kim tries to explain his situation, and apologizes before he takes another plunge into the water. And this time when he comes out, his ex-wife calls him incapable, before breaking up with him all over again. He is left to fend for himself, while the hula girls dance and sing a jingle of a well-known bank, forcing Kim to give up and drown. But not so fast. Kim once again finds himself washed ashore, gagging and gasping for air. As he lays on the sand, he realizes getting off the island won't change how miserable his life is. With no will to live, Kim resorts to himself from a branch. But as he's about to put the loop made from his tie around, the Civil Defense Corps siren distracts him. He focuses back on looping his, but, in the nick of the moment, chickens out. The gravity of what he is about to do hits him hard, and he ends up having anxiety diarrhea. After he relieves himself behind a bush, he spots some salvia flowers. He inches closer to them and plucks a flower to taste its nectar. The sweetness evokes memories, and after tasting a few more, he can't help crying. He cries his heart out at the rush of emotions. After crying his eyes out, Kim looks at the noose and decides to finish himself off some other time. Kim accepts his fate and starts looking for a means to survive. First, he quenches his thirst by drinking water directly from the river, and claims it is delicious, even though it looks muddy and probably is very filthy. He goes around searching for something to eat, and finds wild mushrooms. He plucks one and, without thinking much, stuffs it in his mouth. He doesn't care if he gets ill eating it. And suddenly, he feels life has become easier, now that he doesn't have to think twice before doing anything. He goes into Bear Grylls' surviving mode and tries making fire with the friction of rubbing 2 wood sticks, but with no luck. He throws away the stick in frustration, citing it as all a lie, and then proceeds to light up a cigarette using a lighter he found washed ashore. At night, lying beside a bonfire, he takes out his wallet and, looking at the picture on his ID, asks himself if he's happy. He knows the answer, and to help himself get out of his misery, he starts eating his credit cards before tossing away his wallet. He then turns to look at the bright lights of the city, shining like stars, and calls out half-heartedly, not that help is about to arrive. Frustrated, he walks closer to the shore and removes his pants and underpants to flash his family jewels at the city that betrayed him. The next morning, he starts scouring for things ashore that he can use. He also spots a rundown duck-shaped boat that he drags out of the bushes and turns it into his abode. After many years of struggling, he finally has a place he can call his own. Now that he has adjusted to his new circumstances, his message for help on the sand has turned into, hello. In order to survive, he needs to eat, and for the first time in his life, he tries catching fish using a makeshift net, but with no luck there, he tries catching ducks. But when nothing works, he is forced to survive on mushrooms alone. Desperate for a proper meal, Kim makes a spear using a stick and a fork tied together. His fishing adventure ends up with him stabbing in the foot. Frustrated, he tries climbing a tree to grab the nest with eggs, but ends up getting pooped on. So, to wash his face and hair, he uses the bottle of detergent he recovered on the shore, and to his surprise, he finds fish floating in the foamy water. The detergent must have expired and become toxic, but it doesn't stop Kim from eating those fish. He cooks them up, and after days, he has a hearty meal. At night, while he sleeps, some birds come to feed on the leftovers, but they perish because of the toxicity. Kim, however, is delighted to find more food and enjoys his perfect boredom. Meanwhile, somewhere in the city, a girl scours the internet while sitting in a very filthy room. She is Kim Young-yeon, a recluse with a burnt mark on her forehead and an addiction to the online world. According to her online profile, she is a very pretty, outgoing woman who travels the world to buy all the things she likes. She is enjoying imagining her online avatar, when suddenly a knock on her door brings her back to her filthy room. A voice asks her if she wants anything, and instead of replying, she texts them, milk. The voice asks Young-yeon to eat something before leaving. And once the coast is clear, Young-yeon opens the door. Out of all the nice dishes kept for her, she grabs the rice bowl and seaweed before shutting herself in once again. It turns out that Young-yeon hasn't been out of her room for 3 years, and what used to be an empty space in her room is full of trash worth 3 years, and an unending supply of canned food. Her windows are also covered, maintaining perpetual darkness in her room. Her daily routine revolves around the time her parents leave, and after having her daily dose of calories and exercise, she begins her online life. After all, maintaining many fake profiles is nothing less than a job. After calling it a day, she finally removes the covers from her window to pursue her hobby, which is taking pictures of the moon. Her routine is a way for her to escape the loneliness and make her think she has had a busy day. She has made her closet her bed, where every night, she hypnotizes herself to sleep. The only time she opens the blinds in the middle of the day is during the mock drill of the Civil Defense Corps, held twice a year. According to her, for 20 minutes the Earth seems like an empty moon. Clicking pictures of the empty roads, she feels lighter, like one would feel on the moon. On one such occasion, while clicking pictures, she notices help scrawled onto the sand on a nearby island. She thinks it is a sign from an alien when she sees a strange man, our Kim, with a new. Startled, her finger presses hard on the shutter release button, and she ends up clicking many pictures before falling backward. That night, sleep evades her, even after trying the hypnosis 13 times. She keeps thinking about that man, and agonizes herself. When she has had enough, she slowly walks toward her window and tries to look for the man on the island. Noticing him walking on the shore, she feels relieved, as she was scared that he might have perished. But as soon as she sees him flashing his family jewels, she calls him a freak. Nevertheless, he has become her personal alien. Nowadays, Young-yeon spends more time keeping an eye on Kim than on her world, taking his pictures doing various activities. These pictures find a special place amidst the moon pictures. Meanwhile, on the island, Kim has become comfortable with his new lifestyle, and uses the objects he can find as a source of entertainment. Today he is playing golf, and after hitting a shot, he claps for himself. This time, when he hears a fairy approaching, instead of asking for help, he runs away and hides behind the trees, because he doesn't want to go back to how his life was. As he steps forward, he finds a black bean ramen packet, and realizes that even though he is enjoying seclusion, he does miss some aspects of his city life, one being eating ramen. Upon opening the packet, he finds the black bean seasoning, and he takes it back to his duck house. That night, he dreams of black bean paste ramen. This gives him another purpose, and he decides to make black bean noodles for himself. After trying to make noodles from all the random seeds and plants he can find, he ends up making a horrendous-looking black, gooey paste. That night, while roasting the fish, he is lost in thoughts of deep regret, and calls himself stupid enough to pass on black bean noodles every time he was offered. Frustrated, he loses control and is about to eat the seasoning. but then stops and wonders if the seasoning will be enough to satiate his cravings. He tries to sleep, but the bird pooping on his duck house doesn't let him sleep, when suddenly he remembers the birds eat seeds, and there is a possibility he might find seeds in their droppings. Using his credit cards, he starts scraping and searching bird poop for seeds. He then clears a small patch and digs furrows to plant the seeds. But the problem of manure remains, as he's either constipated or has diarrhea. One day, after working in the field, he licks his lips when he tastes his sweat. It has been quite a while since he has had salt. He finally takes the tie down and ties it to the scarecrow he made, using the suit he was wearing when he first arrived on the island. Oblivious to the fact that Young-Yeon is constantly watching him, he continues with his daily activities. Meanwhile, Young-Yeon eats the same black bean ramen while observing Kim. Now, the wall in Young-Yeon's room, which once adored moon pictures, is covered with photos of Kim doing various activities. She desperately wants to meet her alien so she can reply to his hello, and to do so, she maps out the easiest route after buying a bottle of wine. She gears up with a helmet and an umbrella, and at night, when everybody is asleep, she sets off on her mission. She sneaks out of the house and uses a toy to distract the security guard of her building. Once outside, she notices a car approaching her, and very inefficiently camouflages herself using her umbrella. She reaches the bridge on the Han River, takes out the bottle with a note written inside, and hurls it in the river towards the island. It has been 3 months since Young-Yeon sent the note to Kim. Meanwhile, Kim has built a comfortable life for himself on his little island. He is better able to manage himself, now that he has learned to fish and climb trees. He doesn't forget to collect his sweat in order to season his food. One day, while working in his field, he sees sprouts, and cheers as his hard work is finally paying off. Happy, he searches the forest for anything that he can utilize when he finds the bottle that Young-Yeon sent. He opens it and finds a blank paper, but then realizes he has covered the text with his thumb. He removes his thumb, and in the corner he finds the letters hello printed in tiny font. He realizes he is being watched by someone. He even talks about this to his scarecrow, and thinking it could be a psycho, he removes his pants from the scarecrow and puts them on himself. To confirm his suspicion, he scribbles a message on the sand. Young-Yeon, who has been watching him, finally gets a reply after 3 months and 17 days. She is delighted as she looks at the photo she took, which says, "How are you?" with Kim waving. She waves at the picture as if she's waving back at him, and just like that, they become pen pals. One day while talking to his scarecrow, Kim notices the first corn growing on the plant he planted himself. He cries with joy, because now he can finally make noodles with corn powder. Meanwhile, Young-Yeon decides to do something different this time. She calls the delivery boy and gives him money to deliver black bean noodles to Kim on the island. When the delivery boy arrives at the island, he sees Kim hiding behind the bushes. He says that a woman has ordered black bean noodles for him. He then takes out 3 kinds of noodles and a 4th free dish. The delivery man starts to leave when Kim calls him from behind and returns the food. Young-Yeon witnesses this, and when the delivery boy returns to Young-Yeon's apartment, frustrated by all the paddling he had to do, she asks him what the man on the island said. He says the man on the island asked him to tell her. A bowl of black bean noodles is hope to him. Young-Yeon takes the order inside and eats the noodles, as she feels her hope that she had lost all these years has been restored. The next day, Young-Yeon is contemplating how she should introduce herself to Kim, when, as usual, her mother asks if she wants anything before leaving. But Young-Yeon does something that her parents were not expecting. She opens the door and asks her mother to get corn seeds, pots, and other things necessary to grow corn. Her mom is beyond happy because Young-Yeon is changing for good. Young-Yeon apologizes for sending Kim noodles, but Kim doesn't mind, and to show he is not angry, he enacts scenes that would make Young-Yeon laugh. Seasons pass, and Kim's crops are ready for harvest. He carefully picks all the vegetables and corn he has grown, and starts the process of making noodles. He digs up the side dishes he kept from the time Young-Yeon sent him food, and sets it next to the bowl of noodles and other ingredients he has prepared. He finally gets to add the black bean seasoning to his noodles, and already getting emotional, he breaks his chopsticks to take the first bite of the noodles that took him almost a year to prepare. The first bite sends a rush of emotion where he feels happy, satisfied, and proud of himself. He couldn't have asked for more, because he had lost all his hope a year ago, but giving everything up has brought back his hope. Young-Yeon congratulates him, looking at this moment that she has captured forever. She is happy for the man who brought a new light into her life. That night, unable to sleep in the confines of her closet, Young-Yeon sleeps on the floor of her room, next to the corn plants she has planted. After Kim gets a congratulations note from Young-Yeon, he rummages through his belongings and finds his phone. He pretends to talk with his pen pal. The next day, Young-Yeon finds a message written for her. It reads, "Who are you?" Suddenly she becomes anxious, because the sole reason she is a recluse is because of the scar she finds unappealing. She can't bring herself to send her real picture, and decides to send one of her imaginary profile pictures as her own. but she can't bring herself to throw away the bottle with the picture because she feels she cannot lie to her friend. Kim eagerly waits for the message in the bottle, but when he doesn't find it, he decides to ask why. But Yoon gets upset, and after switching off her camera, she closes the blinds. She decides to check her online profile when she comes across a comment saying it is a fake profile of his friend. Some very mean comments follow this, which crushes her as her online created world comes crashing down. A few days later, a typhoon hits the city. It starts slow, but soon takes a turn for the worse. Kim tries to protect his crops and does everything in his power to protect the things he has built over time. They are his only possessions. But when he sees his duck-shaped boat drift into the river, Kim cries, seeing everything he made slipping through his hands, and he helplessly watches them drift away. The following day the typhoon has passed, and Yoon's room is destroyed by the water because she didn't bother to close the window, thinking Kim would be enduring this alone. She immediately rushes to her camera and looks for him, and after some searching, she finds him sitting near what used to be his crop field. She is relieved to see he's safe. However, Kim is devastated, as all his hard work is washed away in the storm, just like before. He expresses his frustration in his scribbling. Yoon is saddened to see Kim upset, but just then, the two Civil Corps personnel behind Kim catch her attention. They are there to clean the island. Seeing them, Kim starts running away. They chase him to the other end of the island, where several volunteers are cleaning. One of them sees him and starts running behind him as Kim runs in the opposite direction. They soon tackle him and bring him down to the ground, while he keeps yelling, "This is my land." He gets kicked by one of the personnels, and as he falls to the ground, he pleads with them to let him stay on the island, as he is waiting for some replies. But one of the personnel tells him the island is a conservation area, restricted to the public. As he is being dragged away, he looks back one last time at the place he called home. Yoon gets perplexed, because she doesn't want to lose Kim. So for the first time in 3 years, she runs out of her house without covering herself, and almost gets hit by a car as she runs on the road. Meanwhile, the personnel leave Kim at a park, from where he looks at Building 63 and decides to end it all, after losing everything once again. Yoon runs on the bridge with all her might and reaches the park, where she spots the crushed bottles, Kim's makeshift slippers. She keeps running, looking for him. Devastated, Kim boards a bus that goes to Building 63. When he touches his wallet against the charging machine, the amount gets debited, which makes him think that even destiny doesn't want him to live. By the time Yoon reaches the bus station, the bus has already left. Both Kim and Yoon cry, as they feel they have lost everything. Suddenly the siren goes off, and the Civil Defense Corps announces an air raid drill. All the vehicles come to a halt, and Yoon once again starts running towards the bus, this time full of hope. She boards the bus, slowly approaches Kim, and introduces herself before asking, "Who are you?" Kim suddenly recognizes her as his pen pal and smiles, feeling hopeful again as Yoon smiles back at him.